Welcome everyone to the Hope Matrix. Super excited to have you listening in today. We have a great chat and a wonderful guest. I'm super excited to introduce you to him. Today we have joining us World Happiness Foundation founder, Luis Gallardo. How are you now? Okay, I said that.
Love it.
God, how do you say it again? You have to help me.
Yes, Gallardo.
Gallardo.
Yeah, you said that perfect.
Can you? I see. I'm not good at rolling my tongue, but I think that's the biggest challenge here.
Gallardo. Yeah, it's a bit of rolling. Yes, I'm from
Just
Spain, so that's pretty why.
yeah, got it. Well, I'm super excited to have you joining us today and chatting about hope and how happiness fits in. I've known you for many years. You've been really leading the space. I love telling people that you were involved in creating the International Day of Happiness at the UN, which is now being celebrated around the world. And yeah, there are so many components of hope that are key to what you're doing in the world. And so, first I want to just review with our listeners the keys to hope and how we've kind of defined hope. Again, hope it's really a vision fueled by positive feelings and inspired action. And we created that definition really too around the science of hope and what's been done in the hope space and also hopelessness. So hopelessness is both that feeling of despair and a sense of helplessness. So it is an emotional and a motivational there's kind of an emotional and a motivational component to hopelessness. And so our aim is really to teach people how to get from that despair to positive feelings and how to get out of helplessness to inspired action. And again, so much of the work you have been done is related to that. I'll also just review quickly with our listeners the 5 keys to hope that we've really kind of set up and identified are first identifying and recognizing the stress response. When we are in our stress response, we're in what we kind of call simply the downstairs brain, which is the reptilian brain, is when we're really emotional and reactive. So we teach people first to identify and recognize that stress response, then to practice happiness habits. So things that keep us in that upstairs brain continuously. The third key being how to take inspired action using SMART goals, and SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. The fourth is creating that strong hope network. So making sure you have really strong people around you and at least one person to talk to in times of distress. And then the fifth one is just kind of overcoming some common challenges to hope. So that's really how we're teaching hope in the community. And again, you have exceptional experience in this space. You've been leading kind of the way in it. So it's a pleasure to have you here chatting with us today. So how are you?
Wow, I'm doing fantastic. I'm so happy being here. Your job not just your job, but actually the work that you've been doing on this topic is just remarkable. I learned so much about hope over the last years with you that actually combining happiness and hope is a winning formulation for so many people around the world. So I'm so happy being here.
Oh, thank you. It's great to have you here. And I have learned so much from you. You've really talked to experts around the world, like doing research in all of these different areas that we talk about as it relates to hope, but specifically around, identifying and managing the stress response, and which is the first thing we'll kind of talk about, and then also the practicing happiness habits. And it's amazing to me because the science has evolved so much around this space. And so, yeah, it's great to have your time and to have you share with our listeners what you're learning as you're moving. And I think you two are you're a living example of what you teach, which is so rare, in the community. So it's great to have you here. So why don't we talk first about the stress response and kind of what you're learning and what you've seen as you've traveled around. Tell me a little bit first just about your travels. Where have you visited and started exploring mindfulness, meditation, and happiness?
Well, the moment I decided to explore the space of happiness and well-being, and of course, hope is a big part of the whole space. And happiness is part of the hope space. That's so interesting because everything is a matrix and multidimensional. When you talk about the mind and you talk about the consciousness, basically, I took it as a personal journey, and I say, okay, who knows about this topic around the world? And I discovered, and I went. So actually, this is now we COVID. We do this through Zoom and through digital technologies. But a few years ago, when it was really possible to travel, I really traveled the world, and I went from California to Bhutan, and I met to India, and I really went to the source. Something that I've been always doing in my life in different topics is going to the source. And I like to meet the source and talk to the source. It's a privilege that not everybody can. That's why now, and this is something that we do together, we bring all these sources to as many people as possible. But I did it myself. So I went to Bhutan and I met the Rinpoches, the monks at the monasteries. And of course, I met, in this case, the government. It was super interesting because, as probably, I mean, as you know, and probably many of the audience know, otherwise, I tell you, when the king, the fourth king of Bhutan, decided, in this case, because it was forced, because his father died, to be the king, he was 16 years old. And somebody asked him, well, what are you going to do for your people? And he said, well, I guess that what they ultimately want is to be happy. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to work for the happiness of everybody. And and that was coming from a 16 years old kid. I mean, that's what kids are about. They are all about happiness. They are all about light. And he was doing that for the last 49 years. And that country became a big reference around the world about how to create public policy and how to bring real tools to everybody around the country. For example, the Ministry of Education created a whole program around green schools with a whole system in order to bring social emotional learning from very early age to everybody in the classroom. So I went there, I spoke with them, I went to the farms, I went to the schools, and it was so interesting because when we were having lunch, I was asking, well, it's super cool to be in one place where you want to be enlightened. Basically, your purpose in life is to be alignment, to be in alignment.
Mm-hmm.
So that was super interesting because they were laughing and say, "Oh, this is really interesting the way you ask," because it's true. I mean, basically here, compassion is not a word; is a value. Forgiveness is not something that we think about; it's what we practice every day. And gratitude is our essence. So actually, they were talking about all these amazing values that we need in order to move beyond despair. And that was the daily coin of everybody there. And that was the way they were becoming happier and happier every day, and the way they were working with little wealth. Because this actually, when you see the rankings of countries around the world, they don't rank very high on happiness because the rankings consider GDP as part of the equation, and the GDP is super low; it's one of the lowest in the world. However, when you are there, you really see, you really feel what that is. So that was one of my, I would say, one of my top places to learn from experience. And then, of course, there are so many researchers right now in the space. And we are so lucky to have, I mean, from Dr. Kellner at Creative Good Science Center, Sonia Lubomirsky, Martin Seligman. Is so many, so much good going on right now around positive education, positive psychology, that everybody is becoming and retrofitting everybody else when they find that, okay, this technique, this methodology, this driver has shown that we can improve even more hope at school, or we can increase happiness by X% if we do one, two, three. So I think that the combination in this case of Indian, I would say Indian, Eastern, Himalayans, Chinese wisdom with everything that is going on in this case in the West around science, the combination is giving an amazing holistic perspective of what could be really good solutions for hopelessness, despair, and sadness.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to me, the challenge is, we know that we can't be, we say in the upstairs brain and the downstairs brain at the same time. But again, the downstairs is where we have that stress reactive response. And I've seen so much stress and so many reactions. And, when we're hopeless, it leads to things like violence, addiction, partner violence, self-harm, kind of all of depression, anxiety, suicide, kind of all of these things that we're seeing in society. And so I've really in the US especially seen stress and our inability to manage stress really reach, I think, historic levels. And so, at that point, practicing happiness becomes hard because we're just in our stress response. So I mean, first of all, do you think that, I mean, did you see in Bhutan people fairly stressed out as we are kind of here? And how do they manage their stress? And do they have the kinds of stressors we do? And I mean, everyone has stress. So, how do you see them dealing with it?
Yeah, well, you know that, Kathryn, that basically individual stress is related to your community. So as we grow up and as we evolve as humans, our thoughts wouldn't exist if we were not part of a community. So this is very important because sometimes we think that our thoughts are ours, and the science proves that they are not even ours. It might be someone else's thoughts. We all know that out of 60 plus thousand thoughts every day, they are repetitive. They are, I mean, I would say almost 70% are negative, and almost 65% are the same thoughts the whole day. And then if we know that they are not ours, they are somebody else because we are beings growing and flourishing as part of communities. Otherwise, we wouldn't be humans. Then you start going granular and understanding that you can manage stress by understanding what is the community you belong to. So when you go to one community, like the one in Bhutan, and especially you go to the Himalayas and you go to one of these remote places, the thoughts of that community are going to be related to the thoughts, I mean, of those people are going to be related to the thoughts of that community. So when you are there, immediately you are relaxed because they are relaxed. Even if you want to be stressed, you cannot because they dissolve your stress. Because suddenly you are connected to a community that is under stress, is overstressed. They know that probably their major issue is the rain that they may have, and that's going to ruin the food that they're going to be eating. Oh, but then the level of expectation is really, really low. When the level of expectation is low, then you don't underestimate everything that you have. And then when you extend that with values such as compassion and forgiveness, which are part of Buddhism, and in this case in Bhutan, I'm giving you an extreme example, but it's important that we
Yeah.
see the other extreme because I feel like what we are living in the US is another extreme in
Hmm.
many ways. I'm from Europe, and I tell you, when I'm living here in the US after living for almost 20 years, it's not what you normally live in other countries. And when I go to Bhutan, where I live there, is not what you normally live in other places. I think that I completely agree with you. The US society is definitely under stress, but it's very important. Everybody has the option to live in other communities, to stop watching the news, to choose very carefully the relationship. When you were talking about the network of hope, this is so important. You have to choose the people that really help you move to the next level. So what I would say is that, and this is a key learning, it's not about individual thoughts, it's about community. And then the community expands to the collective. And the collective every day is more interconnected. Of course, we are connected by energy, but this is something that few people understand. But now we are connected by information. We are connected by social media. We are connected by technology. And this is bringing us everybody's thoughts. That's why it's so important to have leaders of communities that are positive, that are bringing the hope that everybody is looking for, because that's sooner or later is going to have a positive impact around the world. So stress definitely is the first cause of despair in many ways all around the world. But we have to understand that that stress is not just coming from ourselves, it's coming from our communities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the news, you bring on such a good point with the news too. It's, when I detach from the news and don't watch it, and, it's an immediate kind of shift in thinking. Our first lesson on hope, for our overview that we rewrote all of our curriculum this year and revised it. And we took our 12 lessons down to 3, and then we created a deep dive of 16 lessons, but we have hope heroes for each of them. And our first hope hero is actually John Krasinski and what he did this year with Some Good News during the pandemic, and just how, we flock to the news that's, full of just stressful, bombarding us with stress. And yet, to really have a hopeful mindset, we've got to learn how to mitigate that. And John did a really incredible job. I don't know if you saw any of the episodes around that.
I love it. I love it. Hamilton. I still remember the episode. The whole Hamilton crew was singing. That was fantastic. Actually, good news and gossip. Something that is really under our own control
Mm-hmm.
is the concept of gossip. And gossip, and in the corporate level, there are so many companies that actually forbid to have, to gossip, to talk about other people, because this is another factor that creates so much despair in so many ways. So news are related to how we spread the news. And actually it's something that we can control very much is complaining and gossiping. So that's really under our control.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. And you talk about rumination and, worry, which are how what we've identified as the challenge, some of the common challenges to hope. And we noticed, I mean, I was never taught about how my mind did this as a kid, ruminated and worried, and the impact of that, and actually my ability to control it. And, it's so important that we teach kids about that, because when we teach them before the age of 10, they really embrace it and understand it. But when we start trying to teach teens and college and even as adults start trying to fix that, it becomes a much harder to change those habits and that are kind of ingrained in us. And so I love that you bring that up around happiness, and yeah, that we do that we go through over and over the same, things in our mind that often are not positive. And
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, there are three techniques that you learn very quickly when you go deeper into the science of happiness and well-being. Uh, Basically, there are three that are complementary, but they are slightly different. We are more now into mindfulness. I think that this is becoming the meditation part is becoming something more mainstream. There are so many apps out there, but there are two more. One is contemplation, and the third one is concentration. So when you combine concentration with meditation and contemplation, is so powerful. And the one that is working so well for active minds that I see every day is contemplation. Contemplation is beautiful because it looks like, this is very, very Buddhist in many ways, or this is very East oriented, but no, it's super easy. Basically, contemplation is about using the mind, because something that many people have challenge with when they get into meditation is that they cannot stop the mind. And actually, you don't have to stop anything. That's the first thing you learn when you do meditation, is about being aware of your thoughts, right? And then to practice different techniques in order to understand those thoughts and let them go and let them come. And contemplation is different, because with contemplation, you're using your active mind to look into something without judging and seeing and waiting for something to happen. So you can contemplate words, you can contemplate the mountain, you can contemplate the snow, you can contemplate anything you want, you can contemplate the birds. And your mind, your active mind, is going to be without judging, uh, expecting. It's beautiful, because when you get into the space of contemplation, you increase your awareness so fast. In just a few days, you realize things that you never realized before, because you are staying with the same thing for a long time. And that's beautiful. And I think that that step is very helpful in order to get later on into meditation. And then the one that we know a bit more is concentration and focus. And this is something that is very well used by sports people. So the way you focus on one single thing, and you just focus in order to be deep diving into it, but without expecting anything. So with concentration, you don't expect anything. With contemplation, something is going to happen. You don't have to judge, but it's going to happen. And then with meditation and with mindfulness, you can really go deeper into calming your mind, if that's what you have to do, because that rumination that you talk about, it requires to actually stop, not stop, but actually letting the thoughts come and go as if they were waves. So those
Yeah.
three techniques I invite everybody to practice.
So tell me practically, like I'm very visual and it's hard to visualize, but how this specifically. So how do you contemplate? Like share with me an actual practice. So do I sit down for 10 minutes and think about the birds and just contemplate the birds? Like am I thinking about the bird? Like how does it work? I'm not. Okay.
Yeah, this is no, but this is fantastic, because there are three stages to
Okay.
contemplate. So the first one is, well, you realize, and then you go deeper into. Let's talk about let's use the bird as an
Okay.
example. You're looking at the bird, and suddenly you can hear the bird. The moment you are looking at it, and your mind is gonna bring something. So if it's related to the bird, you keep going deeper into what is it bringing to me, and maybe it brings a memory of your youth when you were contemplating another bird. And then you're going to use that thought in order to contemplate that thought provoked by the singing of the bird. And something is going to be happening. And at some point, there is a moment, which is the, the second stage of contemplation, which is the breakthrough. Something is going to happen. And maybe the breakthrough is just transporting yourself into your childhood. When that childhood and that happens, then at some point there will be a third stage, which is merging. And you're going to be merging that with your own reality, the reality of what's going on today. And that phase can take you 5 minutes, or can take you hours. But just by doing that, you are going to be focusing, breakthrough, and merging. And the whole process, when you get a bit of practice, is going to bring you so much relax, so many ideas, that actually you're going to be in action. And then you're going to be using movement in order to go to another stage. So I don't know. We
Yeah,
can play maybe for 10 minutes something. Let's see what happens. But that's the technique. 3 stages, and something happens always.
that's amazing. I love that. Do you have a famous or a favorite person that's speaking on that these days, or practitioner or?
Yeah, I think the big master right now is Richard Rudd. Richard Rudd is a Scottish mystic. He's
Mhm.
in Scotland, and he's the founder of the Gene Keys. So basically, the big transmission that he's bringing to everybody today are the gene keys. So he's connecting the genes with consciousness, and the I Ching is the oldest codex of wisdom in the world, more than 5,000 years. And actually, he has a book he just launched, and it's Contemplation, the art of contemplation. So, Richard, yes,
Yeah,
if
I love
somebody
that.
wants to learn, Richard Rudd.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's great. It's such an active surrender. So it's a and I feel that we often try to control our thoughts and what we think about and don't think about. And so sometimes we need to think about things that we don't necessarily want to. And that seems to be like a really good method for getting there, to uncover things that we need to uncover without, you know, forcing us to control to control it all. So
Exactly, because with meditation, you are gonna go at some point so deep that you are gonna be at some point transcendent. I mean, there is even one meditation which is transcendental meditation, and that means that you have the waves. I mean, when you are sailing, you have all these, or you are swimming, you have the waves. The deeper you go, the calm, the more calm you get, because in the deep ocean is all calm. So that's the concept of meditation. You're gonna get into that deep calm that is going to help you really to stop rumination in many ways. But in order to go deeper into deep calm, you need to know how to dive. And this is the whole meditation teaching. Contemplation is different, because contemplation, you don't need to go deeper and dive, because you don't need a higher connection. You don't need to stop rumination. You're going to keep listening to your mind and using your mind, but it's going to be unfolding and uncovering things that you never realized before, because we are going to spend enough time with the same thing. So you can choose one word. So, for example, one word that I learned with Richard is the word synarchy. It's not synergy, it's synarchy. It's SY, synarchy. Well, this is one of the words that nobody really uses in normal language, right? It's like, oh, wow, what does it mean? So that's the process of contemplation. Let's contemplate the word synarchy. And actually, synarchy means that the whole works in harmony. Okay, there you have whole and harmony. Okay, what does it mean, the whole? What is it, harmony? And that's an example is the body. The body is the whole. It works, it's amazing. We don't need to do anything, even it breathes for itself. But when you know that the body is an example of synarchy, okay, can we think about other examples of synarchy? Uh, let's contemplate those. How is it possible? And what about if you as a person, you are all about creating synarchy? How do you do it? So then you can explore and expand, and suddenly you being unfolding and uncovering things that you never imagined before. And that's going to bring you to some places. And those places are going to bring you breakthroughs. And those breakthroughs, in the end, when you merge them with the reality, then it's going to bring you to another state and another level. So this is an example of how to contemplate one word.
I love that. Very cool. So and that brings me to your happiness event. Is he speaking at it?
Yeah, actually, he's been speaking to during the last two, Richard.
Oh,
Um,
wonderful.
the next one is in March 18th to the 23rd. It's a whole week, 6 days of events. And we go from work, happiness at work, to health, curated by yourself. So you know what that's about. Um, self, the planet, the connection with the planet. That's where normally Richard can fit. Then we talk about education, public policy. So we recognize as well amazing work going on, like the one in Reno with the mayor. I mean, it's amazing what you are doing, and the mayor in Reno around hope. But yes, it's March 18, 23rd, and it's going to be thousands of people around the world sharing and learning about the practice and the theory, but we are very practical. We really like to learn from experience, and all the teachers and all the guides that join us normally share some techniques, and one of them is going to be this, the one on contemplation.
Hmm. Do you have a favorite talk that you've heard or a favorite person that you've listened to? Or is it just,
Yeah, every guide, I call them guides because what I love of the word guide is that they know where you're going. They know where things are going, and they are gonna be able to guide you because they already know the way. So those are the masters. Those are the real people that we bring here. I still remember. You remember the interview with Shekhar Sasana?
mm-hmm,
It was early, very early during the pandemic, and we were already talking about infodemic
mm-hmm,
instead of pandemic. It wasn't just a pandemic, and from that moment, everybody start talking about infodemic. So this is the type of people I love. Is people who are ahead, who they are ahead not because they think, because they've done it, they've seen it, they experience it, and with that approach, we have so many of them. I think Shakar is one of my favorites. Or Vikram is another one that is fantastic. But there are so many. The last one, for example, the one we did in November, Gabriela Wright. She's now working
love
with
Gabriella.
Deepak Chopra on the Never Alone Foundation. She was fantastic. She was very practical, bringing theater and a stage, the way we showcase ourselves in front of others and how we are present really, really says everything about our future attitude. And she was teaching people how to hear their voice and how to stage and be present in the stage of life. So they are artists, they are musicians, they are experts. It's pretty cool. It's a big week.
Yeah, it is. I know you've brought so many different people from so many different kind of walks of life into the happiness movement, which is what I love about it so much, and bringing their expertise. Also, I love the technology aspect of it. That you don't often think about happiness and technology together, but just how can we use technology to further our collective humanity and enjoyment of the presence, and how can we use them as tools for good and not as tools of distraction, which they can often become if we're not careful. So yeah, it's a great. Yeah, so we'll put the link in the comments around all of the work you're doing around the world. And I think a lot of the information you have is free too, of past talks, a lot of incredible resources. And so I'm excited to share that. So that again, it's March 19th, the 18th through the 23rd.
Yeah, correct. Because March
Yes.
20th is International Day of Happiness. So
Oh, right.
we link that week to the United Nations International Day of Happiness, and we celebrate. We celebrate, but this year the whole week is focused on co-creating a secure base for those in the front lines of suffering.
Mm,
So much suffering right now at so many levels. So we are going to focus on suffering. We are going to understand suffering from every single angle, and we are going to go deeper into solutions. So it's going to be beautiful because we did that before with belonging, the concept of belonging, loneliness versus belonging in November, and it was incredible how we have more than 150 experts going around belonging, and we dissect the whole thing. So now we are going to go and we are going to be doing the same with suffering. So let's understand the roots, let's understand the phases, the exit, and then the growth, because we have to be very hopeful in that regard. Most people grow after trauma,
yeah.
and this is something that we can all learn. So how do we grow instead of being stressed? Even if we are stressed, how do we overpass and overcome that in order to grow? So that's the whole week, International Day of Happiness. But in this case, because of what's going on, there's going to be big component on suffering and understanding the front lines, those who are in the front line. And right now we are so many in the front lines. So we have to create that secure base.
Yeah, I love that. And providing solutions, which I think is so important. So not just talking about the problem, but yeah, giving solutions. I mean, I can't imagine the amount of, hopelessness is defined again as despair and helplessness. And if you're on the front lines and it's a continual high stress for so long, I can't imagine, once we come out of this, kind of the after effect on hopelessness and in these specific populations, and kind of learning about what they've gone through and how we can best support them in healing, which I think is going to be so important. So yeah, as I think about speakers too and getting together experts, I'll definitely keep that front and center of mind. Um, yeah, a lot of amazing people doing great work in the healthcare space. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining. It was a pleasure catching up with you on the Hope Matrix today and sharing your work with a broader population and sharing how it relates to hope and why it's so important for hope. And so I appreciate you joining, and we'll definitely we'll put the link to all of the work you're doing. What is your website that you would most like people to type in or go to find out more about you and all the amazing things that you've done and are doing?
Yeah, probably the best is three W's dot worldhappiness.foundation.
Got
So
it.
actually, that's everything under the umbrella of the World Happiness Foundation, non for profit, and trying to bring so many people around the world together to make a difference. But I would say worldhappiness.foundation, and there people are going to have the academy, the fest, and the discovery expeditions that we do around the world. But yes, worldhappiness.foundation.
Perfect. So not.com, worldhappiness.foundation. Awesome. Love it. Well, thank you. So good chatting with you. And thank you to all the listeners for joining today. Hope you got some good insights, contemplation. I love that. And I'll look forward to chatting with you all again soon. Thanks so much for listening.